So welcome to the Herkimer Central School District Instructional Technology Support. Today we're doing an intro on Google Jamboard virtual training. And today what we're going to be talking about is really introductory stuff on Google Jamboard and getting ourselves ready to do next week, which is implementing it into the classroom, into the regular classroom, into the hybrid classroom, as far as that, and sharing ideas and sharing templates and some other things like that. So today really what we're going to cover is the options to start a Jamboard, the interactive elements that Jamboard has to offer, how to load some images. You can even load GIFs into that. We're going to talk about the sharing options and use of Jamboard, and then we're going to talk about some ideas for application, which will be a nice lead into next week. So that is what was on the agenda for today. So let's get started with our Jamboard discussion. So first off, I wanted to let you know is that Jamboard, everybody knows that we can start a Jamboard in a Google Meet. If we go to the activity button, which is the triangle, square, and circle at the very top, that's your activity buttons. You can start Jamboards in that way. But the other thing is that I want to note is that here in your waffle is that you can do it, set up a Jamboard ahead of time. So if you wanted this for a class activity, you could set it up ahead of time and actually assign it to students like you would assign your a regular document to students, which is when we get into sharing options, that's also important to note there as well. So you can see here I've got a bunch of recent jams up here. Let me just pull up a blank one so we can just talk about some of the stuff and some of the options. Then we're going to share around and play with some of these things so I can show you some other options or some other features that when students are using these that you have at your ability as well. So I started this by going to the waffle. I started a Jamboard. So this might be what I'm doing if I'm going to start or have something set up ahead of time for the kids. We have the pen tool. It has different ways of writing. You've got a regular pen. You've got kind of a marker. You've got your highlighter and you got a paintbrush and you have your color options that you can swap around here with. We have your eraser feature, obviously to erase things that you may have done. Your pointer tool, so if you're done writing something, you want to go to your pointer tool so you can point things out. We've got your sticky note with options and colors as well. So we can go ahead and set a sticky note. We could even do a transparent one if we wanted to, and just set that up there. Use that for putting that for there for something for later. We have our images. Now adding images, we can either do our Google Drive if we have images. We can upload from our computer. We can even look for a URL. We can take images from our camera. We can do a Google image search. What's nice is that if you notice this line right here, only select images you have confirmed that you have the license to use. So in other words, if you do a Google image search in this way, you don't have to worry about usage rights, which is good because if you're going to be publishing something on the web, we don't want to get nabbed for a copyright issue. So if you add an image this way, that's really great because we don't have to worry about the usage rights. And then Google Photos, if you have anything saved for your Google Photos. Ms. Jones might like my little GIF that I got down here. So let's insert that. And you'll notice that because it's a GIF, it's actually going to, it should, once it loads, be animated. I guess it doesn't come through as animated. I can show you how to add GIFs later on. We also have our shapes. If we click the little side here, we have circles, triangles, squares, diamonds, arrows, blocks, bars, half circles, and rounded circles, or rounded rectangles. We have our text boxes. We've got our, oh, yeah, Ryan, Mr. Aurelio there. If you have any questions, Mr. Aurelio has volunteered to be our moderator for our questions. So if you have anything, feel free to type in there. He'll keep an eye on that. One limitation of your text box is if you notice, if I want to put in, like, say, a shape, like let's say I want to put in a rectangle here, and I want to write inside that rectangle. Usually, like in Google Draw or something, you can double click on the rectangle and automatically add in those words. That doesn't necessarily do that here. So what you'd have to do is come back in with your text and match that box up, and that way to get text inside the box. So that's kind of a limitation there. So just be mindful of that. So I'll do some text inside my box. I want to get that inside the box. I kind of would go back here to fill it up. And then, of course, all your normal options up here are for changing the color of your text, changing your alignments, changing the heading, stuff like that. And then laser pointer, it's easy to point stuff out because it disappears after a while and such like that. There's also object manipulation. So if I go back to my selecting tool, select the box I want to object manipulate, I can rotate it around. All right. Change the size, all that normal stuff. It's also going to object lay in the order in which you put things down. So if you wanted to make sure something was on top, you're gonna have to change the order. So that's actually fun to talk about when you're in like a computer programming course or an order operations course. You might want kids to lay things down in the right order. So that's a different little object thing you can do there. Now, when it comes to adding images, like I said, we can add images for any of these ways. We can also change the background. If I go to my selector tool up here, you'll notice that I can set my background. I'm going to come up here to this object up here and go to a new frame, which is like another board. So you can see I can slide back and forth. And I can go to set background. I can make it dots. I can do lined paper. I can do graph paper. Or if I wanted to do an image that I want students to put something on top, but I don't want them to manipulate the image itself, I can actually change the background. And now I've got my background as an image, and students aren't able to manipulate this image. They're actually just able to draw on top. So even if I take my eraser tool and try to erase things, that background image stays and it doesn't change. So that's a nice object there when you're going to do that. If I made a mistake or we're done with a jam or something, I can always clear the frame and that'll clear it out. So you'll notice if I go back here and hit clear frame, clears out the entire frame, makes it blank slate again. But if I come back to here and hit clear frame, nothing happens. Why? Because I set this as my background. So that's an important distinction too. If you want something for the kids to interact with, and then have it wiped clean, but still leave an image of whatever you're working on, set it as your background. And again, it becomes an object that the students can't manipulate. It's always going to be there. So that's regular loading an image versus setting a background. So kind of like when you're doing a Google Slides, if you set something as your background, it becomes its own layer. It can't be manipulated by the students. Let's start a Jamboard here in our Google Meet. So I'm going to go to my three dots here, and I'm going to open a Jamboard. And we're going to start a new one. Now, again, with the limitations to Jamboard, you have to remember that only 16 kids are going to be able to use it. And the first 16 kids that you pick are going to be able to use it. Now, when you start a Jamboard, if you go to the three dots at the bottom of Google Meet, there's a Start a Jamboard. It's going to show you all the people that need access to the file. And one of the first things I need to do is make sure everybody can edit it. And also anyone the link, so all these 12 people can edit it, and I'm going to send it to you, and you should be able to see the Jamboard pop up. Again, this is going to open it up in a new window, so I'm not going to be able to see the students once we start working on a Jamboard unless I change or slide my tab over. I think I've slided it over here. We should be able to see that blank Jamboard on my screen. Good. All right. So as everybody joins the Jamboard, feel free to write around. I'm going to put something on the second frame. Here, I'm just going to put in a new image here. There we go. So on the second frame, I put in a little program here for people to work on. So this is a sample Sphero program that we might want to have the kids talk about. We could be popping this up here and be like, okay, guys, what do you think the problems with this this program might be, or what we might want to add? So I might say on a sticky note, let's say add a loop. And we could slide that around and be like, hey, we should probably add a loop in here or something. a fun little thing is if you have, most people are using Control C or Control V for copy and paste. If you do Control D, it's duplicate. So you cuts out a step. It saves you a half a second. So you're welcome for that half second. So now as our students start to work on it, if I expand my frame down here, I can see that Colleen Thomas and Melissa Elias are on frame number 1 working. And I can see that Mrs. Jones is on frame number 2. If I wanted to add in an extra frame in between here, if I said, hey, this is a great sun, now in Jamboard number 2, draw me the opposite of what a sun might be, I can add in that, and now I can see Miss Elias has moved over to the second board. I can see that she's actually occupying 2 boards. I can see that where everybody is. So that's something that you can do to slide through. And to do that, what I did is I went up to the top here where these things are. I expanded in the frame bar and we dropped in. And now you can see, ooh, we got a nice image there of a total lunar eclipse. All right, so that's pretty cool. So that's something that you can do with Jamboard as far as expanding out your frame bars and seeing what people are working on. Now, there used to be a back way of doing version history, so you could see what was going on and who was doing what. They've gotten rid of that, and apparently as little as a month ago, this worked. But if it ever comes back, there's actually a keyboard there was a keyboard shortcut for version history. And in case it ever comes back, I wanted to share it with you. You would hit Control, Alt, Shift, and H together, and that used to bring up version history. They've gotten rid of it within the last month. I don't know why. I did hear a lot of people say that they wish there was a version history. So in case it ever pops back, I just wanted to let you know that Control plus Alt plus Shift as H would give you, yes, so there you go. Control, Alt, Shift, H used to give you version history. But if you do Control, Alt, Shift, P, somebody want to try doing Control, Alt, Shift, P on this and see what happens? I don't know if anybody's on the second one. Oh, Ryan, you're on a Mac, aren't you? Yeah. I don't know if it'll work with Control, Command, Alt, P. I'm not in Jamboard. Okay. Control, Alt, Shift, and P is supposed to bring up a shortcut for a Post-it note. So if you wanted to add a quick Post-it note, you could always do that. And if you change your color, it's going to stay on that color. So every time you go back to doing a Post-it note, it would stay on the color that you last selected. So that's kind of an interesting, that's just kind of an interesting little thing to use. Also note that here we've got our sharing options. So if we wanted to, say, share this out with another group, I could always do that. One way I've seen using this is if you are having breakout rooms, a Google Jamboard is a great way to assign one student in each group to be the recorder of the breakout, and then they can share it with the teacher. So if we wanted to share what we were doing, say, with our teacher, I'm going to say Mr. Rogan's our teacher, and I want to share that with him. Once we get all done with it, I can send it to him, and that's proof of what we were doing and what we brainstormed in our breakout room. So it's a nice way to keep accountability and keep track of what the students are working on. So sometimes what I'll do in STEM classes, I'll give them a prompt in my slide deck. I'll be like, okay, guys, you're about to go to a breakout room, and in your breakout room, this is what you're going to be drawing or discussing. Please have one person share the Jamboard with me when you're all done before we come back to class. And it's not a great system, but it's something that you can always use for a Jamboard. Other ways you can use this in class that I've got coming up next week are going to be things like putting Post-its on top of classes. You can, let me see, where's my, you can put Post-it notes on top of pictures to label pictures. You can use it to have kids check in and do an exit ticket as far as how they're feeling, their emotions. Since kids are taking photos, you can always have them take photos of examples in your classroom. Let's say If an elementary classroom, we want to do odds versus evens. That's something we could always have the kids go find something in the room that has a number of evens, or find something that's odds. You can sort objects, which side goes on which side. If you wanted to set up ahead of time an order of operations for something, let's say one thing I used to do in my class is we're talking about order of operations. I would just say, okay, we're going to really quickly here just talk about getting ready for school. And we would talk about, all right, which order do we put these things in? And, you know, some people might say, oh, I put my shirt on first, and I put my pants on next, and then I put my socks on. And then another kid might want to come in here and duplicate this stuff and say, yeah, but I put my socks on first, and then I put my pants on, and then I put my shirts on. And then we're like, okay, so we got a couple different ways of doing things here. And then what I could do is, all right, use your Bitmoji, or use a picture of yourself, or type in your name to which order that you do these things in. And I might be like, okay, I'm Mr. Matthew, he does this first. And we can take quick kind of fun polls that way and be like, I think this is the right answer. Or someone else could be like, I think this is the right answer. So it's just becomes different ways of using an accountability or a tracking of kids. And so now we know Mr. Aurelio, he puts his shirt on first, then he puts his pants on, then he puts his socks on. But Mr. Matthew, he puts his socks on. And talking about, and that leads to discussions of how, you know, which way we do things. It can also become a very easy matching activity, drawing lines to match things. So we're really going to go off and talk about all the different ways that we can use Jamboard. I've got a bunch of different templates for next week. I can give you a little preview of some of these templates for you. You know, this is going to be a real quick go through, but I'm going to kind of talk about in more in-depth detail of what some of these things that we're going to be using next week are. Ideas for Jam. So some quick ideas, about 9 ideas I jotted down for using a Jamboard in the classroom. As soon as this loads up, you know, I've got labeling of a diagram. I've got some names over here of everything. I also have, this would be something I would individually assign a copy to each kid that they could slide these around. Again, I made this picture of the background so they can't manipulate that. Then I differentiated for some kids, you know, change the color of the sticky note based on where digestion begins. Having kids find photos of odd numbers versus even numbers and allow them to slide those numbers around. Here's something where this is 3 truths and a lie, you know, figure out who this person is, and figure out the 3 truths and the 1 lie about the person, sliding facts around about them. Graffiti walls, just having kids write down words or thoughts or ideas about anything that's going on. Self check-ins, asking how people are doing on something. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Usually I ask for photos of how they feel about a topic or how they feel about something, or maybe just how they're feeling in general. We've got annotation, you know, highlighting nouns, verbs, and adjectives in this. Again, this is something I could assign to individual kids and have them do work on like kind of a little Jamboard deck for them. 4 corners, I could have them debate topics. They could slide their picture on which way they think an answer might be if we're checking in, or maybe how they feel about something on a scale of 1 to 4. 6-word stories. This is my 6-word story Broadway edition, which, you know, can you guess which Broadway show is this by the 6 words? Or maybe I want them to define or simplify a topic in 6 words. Or sometimes if we get wordy word problems, break down this word problem into 6 words. What are the 6 most important words in this word problem that you need to know to help solve it? Because we all know how they love to put words that are unnecessary in a word problem. And then, of course, we got the emoji edition of a topic exit ticket. What do we think of that topic? What do we think of something? And having all the different options that the students can drop in, or or allowing them to express themselves without having to write words down, just using photos, stuff like that. So I'll go into depth these topics a little bit more next week, and these templates a little more next week. But that's a real quick, real fast refresher on Jamboard, what it can do. And we'll see everyone next week for applications. I'm going to end the recording now. So if anybody wants to stick around, has any questions, feel free to ask.